good evening and welcome. Make sure to hit subscribe for even more creepiness and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Tonight, we're going to have yet another trio of terrors from the paranormal subreddit. Turn off the lights, sit back, and let's begin. When I was 10, my mother had gotten remarried. We, my sister and I, had only met him about 2 or 3 times during their 6 months of dating before he proposed. After the marriage, we moved in with him shortly after in his small 3-bedroom house. He also had 2 sons with him, who shared the first bedroom, and my sister and I took the second. I just remember fighting with my sister about who gets the top bunk. We played a game of rock, paper, scissors to choose who would get the top bunk, and inevitably, I won. I don't know why, but I'm pretty good at that game. I was after stoked. I couldn't help but rub it in her face. After a couple of nights, I soon came to regret it. The ceiling just hung 4 feet above me as I slept, and in the middle of the night, I heard loud thumps, like heavy boots walking. It was loud and would wake me immediately. I would be scared stiff and wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. The next morning, I ran to my mother to tell her about what had happened, but to her, they were just nightmares. She even thought they were possibly squirrels that got in the attic. But I ruled that aside as I don't hear scratching or the sound of small feet scurrying. The basement was another story. It was the coldest, creepiest place to be. Yet it was fully renovated with a carpet and nice ceilings. It just felt like I was always watched down there. Now, the basement was where we kept our old fat computer, the kinds that still exist for floppy disks and CDs. We didn't have internet, but I enjoyed using the drawing format and played the game Ping Ball. I would spend hours down there drawing, playing, and even writing short stories. We had a pit at the time and she would sit with me beside the chair. Immediately she started growling, and I just looked at her thinking, what a dumb dog. She growled at the walls and I brushed it off. Then she began growling in my direction, slowly backing off as she did. I kept trying to tell her to calm down and shut up when I realised her eyes weren't focused on me. They were focused on whatever was under the table that I was sitting at. When I realised this, a cold chill ran down my spine and I sprinted up the basement stairs. I never look back and never go down there alone. It sounds crazy, but sometimes I swear there's a head poking out of the corner watching me when I was down there. The thumps at night wasn't stopping. I'll know that all access to the attic was sealed off, including the windows outside. There was no way another individual would get in, nonetheless an animal. I soon envied my sister for getting the bottom bunk, and even tried asking her to switch with me, to which she turned me down. Over the years of living there, I would see shadow figures. Sometimes they were walking in the hallway, sometimes they crawled on the walls. I remember one time I got out of the shower and as I dried my face, blood appeared on the walls and my body, and in a flash they were gone. Another time in the bathroom, I had finished a shower and opened the door to see a pale little boy look back at me before instantly disappearing. I keep trying to tell my mum about my experiences, but to my mother, I was just seeing things. My eyes were just playing tricks. The thumps in the ceiling were still happening, and sometimes they started to sound like the feet of a small child running. I started sleeping with night lights. One of the icings on the cake for me was when I was chilling in my mum's bedroom while my stepdad was at work. I was laying on the bed and playing Tetris on her flip phone when my mum was in the bathroom. Suddenly, something hit the bed hard enough where you could see the ripple of the direction it came from. The impact was enough to move the bed slightly, and I jumped, terrified. I ran into the bathroom, slammed the door, begging for her to let me in. I was screaming, terrified. She finally let me in and looked at me with annoyance, and I explained to her what had happened. And there was the usual, "Oh, it's nothing." At the age of 13, my parents bought a new house and we moved in. You can't believe the difference in energy that a house carried. It was empty, literally felt empty. I didn't feel a thick negative energy in the air. I didn't feel eyes on me. I didn't see shadows. I felt calm, peace and light. And that was how I kept my sanity. That was how I proved myself that I wasn't crazy, because the new house felt clean. I never experienced anything else after that, aside from some sleep paralysis experience. But other than that, that house was completely normal. As an adult now in my 20s, I drove past the old home to show my friends, and I still felt the chills just looking at it. Sometimes I wonder how the current family living there is, and if they experienced the same things I did. My mum believes me now as an adult, and she's ruled me as sensitive. But god damn it, I needed her belief when I was a child. They often say that children are more susceptible to the paranormal and will often see things their parents can't. I'm not saying parents should always believe their child when these sort of stories come up, but you should always listen to them and not simply dismiss things. So I decided to share my experience, and in all honesty, my eyes are so teary right now just remembering it. Sometime in my junior year of high school, my dad had to go on a 2-week business trip, so my friend Miranda decided that it would be cool if I could stay with her until my dad got back. I knew I could look after myself, but it was an opportunity to have a 2-week-long sleepover, so I happily took the offer. At the time, my friend's family was stationed on Fort Meade in Maryland. I stayed in her brother's room. Her brother had moved out about a year before, so at first it was really comfortable, and I enjoyed having a room in my friend's house. It felt like I was part of their family. But as the nights went on, I would say on the 3rd night, things started to get weird. I remember I would wake up around 3 a.m. or sometimes 1 a.m. in the morning every time I was there, in that room. I found it weird because I usually wake up at 5 a.m. so I don't miss my 6 a.m. alarm for school. So waking up at 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. didn't make sense to me because I never wake up at those times, even today. My attention, however, was always focused on one corner of the room, where her brother's desk was. There was a chair behind his desk, and I always felt like something was there. I would also hear scratching in the walls, sort of like a squirrel or something was skittering around. I would just try my best to fall back asleep and ignore the scratching noises. I told Miranda's mum about the scratchy noises, but she told me it was most likely just a squirrel, like I had thought, but I'm pretty sure squirrels aren't up that early. Plus it happened almost every night. So even though sleeping in that room was uncomfortable, eventually I got used to it, until the energy in that room got worse. Maybe after the 6th day, I felt extreme feelings of hate and violence. It really made me feel uncomfortable, and I honestly felt like somebody was in the room with me and wanted to hurt me. It was so bad that I would get really uncomfortable changing my clothes in that room because it literally felt like a man was watching me. Sometimes I would change in the bathroom. In my head, something was telling me that it was a male presence. It felt like it was a soldier that was middle-aged. I never saw anything, but I just felt the energy of the presence so strongly, and that's really unlike me. I always felt like he was watching me with malicious intent. I felt like I was going to be attacked constantly. But anywhere else in the house, I felt normal and happy. I told Miranda about the experience because she could feel that I was afraid of that room. She told me that sometimes her dog Bubbles would come inside that room and just bark at nothing. Once she did it for 10 minutes, she told me, and she just walked out like nothing happened. So Miranda and I were discussing this inside of her brother's room, and out of the blue comes her dog Bubbles, and she starts freaking out and barking at Miranda. Bubbles isn't a violent dog. She's a small, cute, miniature pinscher, and she never acts like that, especially towards Miranda. Miranda and I kind of looked at each other in surprise. After about 10 minutes of her barking, Bubbles flinches and cowers toward me. I continued to stay in that room until I left to go back home. Her little sister Jenny would talk about things she had experienced in that house, and one of her experiences was waking up one night and seeing someone in the corner of her room. It was tall and looked transparent, but still had colour. She said it looked like an old era soldier with a blue cap and a blue uniform. He was just staring at her. He disappeared shortly after she froze up. It really made me think that there was something in her house. A soldier that was full of hate and violence. I hated her brother's room after that, and every time I would pass it, I felt angry and violated. They no longer live there, but it will live in my memory forever. To me, it sounds like a soldier from the Civil War with the blue uniform of the Union. Trying to sleep in the same room as a malevolent spirit wouldn't be something I would recommend. It's worth prefacing this with the acknowledgement that I don't know if what I experienced was paranormal, and that, at least intellectually, I don't believe in ghosts. My logic being that if I don't believe in werewolves and vampires, and can't factually see any more validity in ghosts, then I must not believe in ghosts either, regardless of how interesting I find the concepts concerning the paranormal. That being said, this is the one experience I've had that I can't entirely explain. At the time, 4 years ago, with me being 21 then, I was the assistant manager of a DVD store. We had just locked the doors for the night and were about to reset everything for opening tomorrow. I stepped outside to smoke a cigarette, leaving my younger co-worker inside. He would usually follow me out, and the two of us would shoot the shit for about 5 minutes and relax a bit. The winter had just started and it was a bit too cold to go outside unless you had a reason, so I went alone. After a couple of minutes of putting smoke and playing on my phone, I was about to go inside when I heard footsteps behind me. Not abnormal being in a strip mall, but being that we had been robbed once before, you notice those types of things. I turned around and saw a woman who, I assume, was about as old as me, possibly a little older, but within her 20s. She seemed very shaken up and looked like she'd been crying. Worse than that, she was extremely underdressed, wearing only shorts and a tank top and no shoes, on a night that had dropped into the lower 30s. I asked her if she was okay, and it took her a moment to respond, asking me if she could use the phone. I obviously told her yes and ran inside to grab the store phone and one of the jackets all of the employees got every year. The entire situation was weird. My wife has asked me since this has happened why I didn't offer her my cell phone, the truth being, it didn't occur to me at the time. When I came back out though, she was gone. Nowhere to be seen. I was only in the store for a matter of seconds, and I would think I should have been able to see her across the parking lot in any direction if she simply walked off, but no such luck. I went back inside and checked the cameras, hoping to see where she may have gone. They weren't aimed at that specific spot. We called the police shortly after that because she genuinely seemed in trouble, but never heard anything back from them as far as any sort of follow-up. Again, I can't say for sure if this was a paranormal situation, but what I can say is it really stuck with me for the last few years, and somewhere in the back of my head, I've always felt like there was something deeper going on than what I experienced on the surface level. The only thing I can possibly think of is that the woman maybe ran around a corner and out of sight, but that seems unlikely due to being barefoot and virtually naked in the cold. If it wasn't a paranormal, one can only assume that drugs and or abuse were involved. Not a happy story either way. There you have it, guys. Let me know your opinions in the comments section down below. You can also follow me on Twitter and chat with me over at the Opinionated Outcast Discord server. If you really like what I do, consider supporting me on Patreon, where there are rewards and sneak peeks and all the juicy goodies. All links are in the description box below. Thank you. Good night.